welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into one of history's absolute most captivating and, frankly, totally misunderstood mysteries. We are going to completely untangle the reality of the Illuminati from the sprawling, terrifying fiction that pretty much dominates the internet today. And spoiler alert, the actual history is a lot shorter than you might think.
So let's just start with the big question, the one that fuels all those endless late-night internet rabbit holes. Who really controls the world? I mean, when we watch global power shift and economies wildly fluctuate, it is incredibly tempting to believe there's some invisible hand pulling all the strings behind the curtain, right?
And because of that temptation, we are constantly bombarded with the modern Illuminati myth. You absolutely know the narrative. It's a shadow government controlling global finance, a roster of A-list celebrity members throwing up secret hand gestures, all working toward total world domination. It's a story fueled almost entirely by music videos, online rumors, and just intense cultural paranoia.
What's wild is how deeply this myth actually invades our subconscious. Take this incredibly eerie quote from an anonymous Reddit user back in 2021, describing a downright terrifying dream. And the thing is, they aren't alone. People from London to Delhi have shared these strikingly similar experiences of being called into dark halls by glowing eyes to take secret oaths. These stories kind of prove that the lore has practically become a living entity now. It features these dark rooms, creepy masks, and the distinct, chilling feeling of being watched by an all-powerful elite. It's turned into a massive cultural phenomenon. Honestly, it's a modern ghost story that completely blurs the line between geopolitical reality and pure, unadulterated imagination.
Okay, but let's do a hard pivot back to reality for a second, because the historically factual group, they existed for barely 9 years. That is literally it. They were founded in 1776, targeted by authorities in 1784, and completely dismantled by 1785. There were no massive global empires, no centuries of secret control, just a brief, very real intellectual club over in 18th century Bavaria.
And honestly, it creates a completely absurd, almost comical contrast when you look at it. On one hand, you've got the mundane historical truth, this short-lived, localized group promoting logic and opposing censorship. And on the other hand, you have the modern myth, an immortal shadow government controlling the entire globe. The two literally could not be more different.
So, who were the real guys? Well, they were founded by Adam Weishaupt, who was just a professor of canon law in Germany. He originally called them the Perfectibilists. Actually, their very grounded goal was simply to free humanity from the strict blind faith control of monarchies and the church. They advocated for rationalism, logic, and free thought, which, was pretty radical stuff for the 1700s.
And they weren't some military force. They had no weapons, just ideas. But man, they were incredibly organized. They operated almost like a spy ring. They used pseudonyms. Weishaupt called himself Spartacus. They employed complex ciphers, and they silently infiltrated existing Masonic lodges just to recruit influential thinkers and politicians.
But as their influence started to grow, the Bavarian government completely panicked. They feared a rebellion, and the crackdown was absolute. By 1785, the group was officially banned, their internal documents were totally exposed, members were exiled, and the entire organization was crushed. The real Illuminati died over 2 centuries ago. Done. Finished. Which obviously brings us to a massive historical paradox. If this little German intellectual club was totally eradicated in 1785, how exactly did they become the ultimate global boogeyman that still terrifies people on the internet today?
Well, the myth snowballed in 4 pretty distinct steps. Almost immediately after they disbanded, conservative critics needed a scapegoat for the massive chaos of the French Revolution, so they blamed the supposedly underground Illuminati. Over the next 2 centuries, this convenient little myth just absorbed everything, from anti-Masonic panic to ugly anti-Semitic tropes, essentially becoming a catch-all villain for any major world event. But here's the most wild part, and a lot of people don't know this. The modern aesthetic, the exact version you see dominating the internet right now, was actually shaped by a satirical 1970s science fiction series called The Illuminatus Trilogy. Yeah, literal pop culture fiction is what falsely injected the pyramids, the glowing eyes, and the global finance stuff into the historical lore.
And that perfectly explains the whole situation with the famous all-seeing eye atop the pyramid on the US dollar bill. Today, everybody assumes it represents this sinister global surveillance state, but historians are incredibly clear on this. That symbol predates the Bavarian group by centuries.
It was an ancient symbol representing divine guidance and enlightenment. It got completely hijacked by 1970s sci-fi.
Yet, fast forward to today, and this totally fictional lore is being projected onto massive celebrities. Audiences will literally dissect every single hand gesture and music video by Jay-Z, Beyoncé, Kanye West, you name it, genuinely assuming these pop icons are active agents of an 18th century Bavarian law professor's defunct society. And there is absolutely zero factual evidence for any of it.
So, why do our brains keep doing this? Psychologists actually call it apophenia. It's our desperate subconscious need to find meaningful patterns in random, totally unrelated information. When you combine our very real, natural anxieties about power and money, our brains start connecting the dots between a pop star's hand gesture and a 300-year-old society. And boom, that results in those terrifying, highly detailed dreams we talked about earlier.
The real truth? Geopolitical reality is terrifyingly chaotic. Global power is just this incredibly messy web divided among competing governments, massive corporations, and totally unpredictable events. For the human mind, it is vastly more comforting to imagine a single, omnipotent villain pulling the strings in the shadows than to accept that, honestly, nobody is actually at the wheel.
So when we strip away the centuries of rumor and internet noise, the facts are pretty undeniable. The real group died way back in 1785. There's no shadow government, celebrities are definitely not secret members, and those ancient symbols have simply been hijacked. The Illuminati we fear today is just an accidental amalgamation of historical scapegoating, 1970s fiction, and our own modern anxieties.
Ultimately, the true underlying mechanism of this whole massive conspiracy isn't some shadow cabal operating in a smoke-filled room. It is simply our own human psychology desperately trying to seek order in a completely chaotic world. We are the actual architects of the modern Illuminati.
So I want to leave you with this provocative thought to ponder as we wrap up. Did we just invent the ultimate ghost story out of thin air to explain a chaotic world, and then scare ourselves so thoroughly that we've spent the last 2 centuries desperately trying to prove it's actually true? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the world around you, and I'll catch you next time.